At a lunch for Republicans in Congress this week, Jody Arrington, who's the head of the Budget Committee in the House, was showing off slides that he has with ideas. And who doesn't want to go to a lunch that turns into an impromptu slideshow? But forgetting that, one of the slides caused utter chaos because the idea was just too crazy to be born. So get this, he proposed, if you can believe it, raising the corporate tax rate. I know. Utterly insane. Don't worry, it was not on purpose. He claims that the slide made it into his presentation by, quote, mistake. And he emphasized that a tax hike on corporations, quote, wasn't even on the table when it comes to solutions to shrink the budget deficit. So that's funny. The idea that he has to apologize for being like, hey, we need to raise money. What if we were to raise money? No, that's crazy. We obviously can't do that. Also, how did it get into your presentation by mistake? Did you make the presentation or did you not? What do you have, like a weirdly reasonable intern? Or did you outsource this to ChatGPT and ChatGPT was like, dude, why are you getting on my back? You said you need to raise money. I just proposed that we do that. This is what AI does to people. But anyway, some of the stuff that they do want to do, and the reason that they're in the difficult situation they are and having to come up with out of the box ideas is that extending the Trump tax cuts, which is literally the only thing they really care about doing, is projected to cost more than $4 trillion over a decade. That's what it's projected to do. I just want to remind everyone that the initial estimates of the first round of Trump tax cuts cost way more than they said they would. So 4 trillion is the estimate. And so they still want to do it. They want to preserve the 21% corporate tax rate when Trump cut almost in half the tax rate on corporations. They want to do that. And so they also say they're going to cut that more. They're going to cut taxes on the individual rich more. And they don't want to raise the deficit or the national debt. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but it doesn't sound like that's possible to do. So one of these things is not gonna happen. I'll let you guess which one they don't actually care about. But anyway, he did give a few ideas and we can talk about what they're actually proposing doing. But Maz, I wanna start with you. It's pretty funny that he was getting criticized for a totally reasonable idea by mistake.
God forbid a corporation pays a tax. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I mean, what's crazy too is that, I see a lot of Republicans complain and it's a grievance culture that exists and they go, we need more of this, we need more of that, we need to do this, we need to do that, but there's no way to pay for any of it. Bringing it back to the Los Angeles fires, there's all this talk right now about how there was budget cuts from the fire department. Well, yes, I too would like more firefighters. I too would like a more robust fire department, but that would mean we need to raise more money and or allocate those to something like that. So in this case, we're talking on the federal level and we're talking about these tax breaks. And again, it's this thing where going into this election, I mean, I think people tried to point out in many logical ways how a Harris administration would have been better for us than a Trump administration. And one of those ways was when they talked about the debt that each will cause with their economic plans. And the Trump debt was a lot more than the Harris debt. And people don't seem to care because as long as I'm getting my tax breaks now, I don't care if the future generations are in debt and they're suffering. So yeah, they just keep, even there was that famous clip of Elon Musk at some rally where the guy asked him, he goes, how much do you think we can cut from the from the debt? And he goes, I don't know, 2 trillion, 3 trillion. He jumps up and down and they say things like it could just happen miraculously. Yeah. And then to your point, when a slide shows up in a presentation that actually is a way to raise money, they all have a big fit.
Like you said, it's comical. I had my mic muted while you were talking, John, but I was laughing throughout the whole story. Just the backpedaling of it all. It is ridiculous, right? It feels farcical because it is. We all have the same problems in this country, and I'm generally speaking. And there are such obvious solutions to these problems. There are such obvious culprits as to, reasons as to why we're suffering with these things that we're suffering from. Granted, the best solutions to these problems may not be the easiest or the quickest to implement. And they're big problems. They took a long time to get so big. They're going to take a long time to reverse if that's what we're actually trying to do. But it feels like politicians, especially Republican politicians these days, would rather just dance circles for years, for decades around these obvious solutions rather than just simply implementing any of them, right? And it's so frustrating because the American people have a lot of consensus on a lot of different issues. On gun control, for example, that's one where most Americans feel like there should be some kind of gun control in this country. But instead, every time there's a mass shooting, every time there's a school shooting, we have to do this dance, right? They have to come out and say, oh, it's so sad, but too bad we can't do anything about it. There are obvious solutions to these problems, and they act like those solutions are so far out of reach. And the reason is they just don't want to do it. And they would rather just kind of look dumb and look like they can't see the obvious thing rather than just do the thing. Because to do the thing would mean that it would hurt them personally. And God forbid they can't possibly live a life that's a little bit less privileged than the one that they currently live.
Yeah, the entire thing is so frustrating. Like that they could not be clearer that the only thing they care about is doing these tax cuts. That's effectively all they did the first time around. That's what they're going to do this time around. And they've got millions of their voters who will never benefit from this cheering it, or they've got them so distracted by how horny they are to control Greenland or whatever that they don't even notice that that's the actual priority, which doesn't make any sense. And I know many of them will think, like, if they hear this, no, it's good because like if we cut their taxes down to like 5%, then I'll benefit in some way. Like they'll hire more people. That's not how it works. They don't hire people because they've got money burning a hole in their pocket. They hire literally the least number of people they have to continue their business. They don't even hire as many people as they need to. Have you been in a Target and looked for help? They're not hiring despite having massive profits. Well, oh, that's fine. Well, they'll have more money, so the price of the goods and services will go down. Is that the experience you had through the first 4 years of Trump? And the taxes are still as low as they were. Is that the experience we've all had collectively over the last decade? They don't lower prices unless they need to, and they haven't felt that they need to. All they do with all that excess money, and it's a lot of money that they've had in excess of over the last decade, is they use it to buy up their own stock. And the reason they do that is to jack up the price of the stock, which is a great thing to do if you're a wealthy a-hole who owns a lot of stock. But for regular conservatives who think that this somehow advances their own economic interests, you probably don't have much, if any, stock. Not most Americans don't. So it by design will not benefit you. It benefits the wealthy and just the wealthy. But, and I'll close on this, they do need to raise some money at least. I mean, they mostly don't care about the deficit or the debt while Republicans are in charge. That goes back decades. They massively raised the national debt under Trump. Not a single, Fox News never even mentioned it. So here's what they're gonna do. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. Graphic 3. Arrington himself is pushing for trillions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid and discretionary spending over the next decade. You know what the government does that actually benefits regular people, they're cutting that. As well as controversial changes to food stamps and federal welfare programs. There are countless millions of conservatives who rely on those programs. They're gonna be screwed over. So the corporations that are already making billions of dollars in profit every year can make even more billions of dollars. Or sorry, maybe he's not serious about doing those things. Maybe those slides were mistakes or whatever, but at least that seems like that's what his plan is. And that is what they always do, okay? A Republican administration is two things. It's a bunch of distractions about migrants and trans people or whatever and fear mongering to hide the fact that they get in to transfer trillions of dollars from the poorest people in the country and from middle class people to those who already have the most. That's what they do every time. They did it with George W. They did it with Reagan. They did it with George W. They did it with Trump the first time, and they're gonna do it again. You can take that to the bank. You won't have much else to take to the bank because they're gonna take all your money, but you can take that promise to the bank. Any final thoughts before we end the show?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, millions of Americans, as I said earlier, they support these programs that are going to be cut. Or as you said, millions of Americans at least rely on these programs, whether or not they realize it. One of the problems with our democratic system here in this country is that we have a voice in our government once a year, right? For president, once every 4 years. And then once they're in there, they can do whatever they want. right? There is no checks and balances on what they're doing while they're in office, right? The only check really is that, maybe we won't reelect you. But the thing is, as long as enough Americans aren't paying attention on election day, then they probably will get it reelected because everybody likes to vote back in an incumbent. So they can do whatever they want. They're not going to feel any consequences of it because the American public is too ill-informed about our political process. And they're also working to make sure that we are continually less informed than we were even back in November, because they're going to make sure that there's all kinds of misinformation and disinformation on all of our media platforms, on our social media platforms. So buckle in, you guys. 2025 is going to get weird.
And I'll say quickly that it's amazing what a job the Republican Party has done to convince their constituents and their base that they're looking out for them. And then these programs that they want to cut are the programs that are going to affect a lot of their constituents and their base. And they convince them by saying, God forbid we help somebody in need, then we're socialists, we're communists. God forbid we hand out some help for somebody who's suffering, a single mom who's got a bunch of kids and she's trying to raise them. That's such a socialist, communist thing to do. You know who we should give breaks to? Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. That's who deserves breaks.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.